We run these funding competitions. Our success rate overall is about 33%. And then in terms of success rates for meritorious research, about 60%. So what that means is 40% of really good projects, we're not funding them because we don't have enough funding to do it. I say that in the context of, these are difficult economic times for the province and for the country, and we recognize that. And so this is just a challenge that we all have to face. We all have to think about how we do things differently and how we invest more intentionally and how we build the case as well for research as a contributor to economic development.
From laboccupier.com, welcome to NGBiPlus, a podcast about the organizations that support Canada's life sciences community and the people behind them. Hi, it's Jim Wilson, and our guest today is Candice Pollack, who is CEO of ResearchNB in Fredericton, New Brunswick. ResearchNB is a research funding agency. Think of the federal tri-councils, CIHR, NSERC, and SSHRC, but combined into one and operating at a provincial level. Her organization funds research and innovation across a number of sectors, including health, energy, agriculture, oceans, and forestry. And in recent years, they've been pushing well beyond the traditional funder role and actively connecting researchers with industry, government, and community to help ensure that research is commercialized. Candice is a lawyer by training, and she will tell you that her path was anything but traditional. But as you'll hear, it is exactly the kind of background that is required for the role she fills. Before we get to our conversation with Candice, we'd like to remind you this podcast is part of the NGBI podcasts, which were created to promote Next Great Big Ideas, Canada's Life Sciences Summit. For details on this year's event, please go to nextgreatbigideas.com. This episode of NGBI Plus was recorded in May 2026. Candice, welcome to NGBI Plus.
Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. Before we started recording, we were chatting about weather, and I think your weather this morning's much better than ours. And I'd like to jump into what your organization's about. It plays an important role in supporting research, obviously, in New Brunswick. What's your elevator pitch? What are you all about?
I was just having a conversation recently about how we need to train researchers to do a better elevator pitch, and I think I probably should take the training myself. But what I would say, so ResearchNB is New Brunswick's research funding agency. So if you think about everybody knows about the tri-councils like CIHR and NSERC and SSHRC federally. We would be all three in one with a much smaller budget. So we are responsible for funding research and innovation projects across all of the province of New Brunswick in our province's priority sectors, which include health, energy, agriculture, oceans, and forestry. So really diverse projects come our way every single day through a number of different funding programs. But a couple of years ago, we also went through some mergers, some changes, some alignment within our innovation ecosystem in the province. And so we don't just fund research anymore. We sort of reconceptualize ourselves as a key partner in research and innovation rather than a passive funder, and have been working on two new elements of our mandate, which are really about how do we connect the dots between researchers and academia and industry or government or community so that we can work on problems together that research can solve, as well as how do we advance research impact. So, how do we make sure that we don't invest in things that just end up as a paper on a shelf?
So the organization consolidated, or I guess came out of a consolidation from, was it BioNB at one point? So the goal is to increase commercialization, like speed up the process? Is that what I'm hearing?
So research isn't just about commercialization. There's a bunch of different impact pathways, right? Like research can inform policy change, which would be extremely valuable. Research can also lead to a practice change that might have some cost savings within our healthcare system or better quality care for patients. Research can also lead to commercializable products that you would want to see go down that path. So what we're doing is kind of saying, how do we, one, pick projects that have great science and great potential for impact and invest in those? And then how do we as a funder play a role in making sure that that project actually moves down that impact pathway, whether it's commercialization or policy change or practice change. What role can we play as the funding agency so that the project doesn't end with the publication and the conference presentation? It actually moves further down that pathway. And then how do we work with our partners who are better positioned, for example, in commercialization, to kind of hand that project off to them in a warm way?
So who are your partners?
I think in New Brunswick, we have the New Brunswick Innovation Foundation. They're responsible for supporting the startup ecosystem in the province. So they do equity-based investment into startups. They do a lot of training and commercialization and so on and so forth. We also work with the Research and Productivity Council, which is more of a, we always talk about sort of the funders and the doers. So RPC would be a doer. They work with all kinds of small, medium, and large enterprises, not actually just in New Brunswick, but all over the world, to help them quickly address any challenge that they might have that they, need to solve. I won't talk about all the cool things that they do because I would never do it justice.
All of the innovation, whatever level, it's all good. So when was the organization founded?
Oh, that's actually a really tricky question. As you mentioned, we emerged in 2023 out of a merger between BioNB and the New Brunswick Health Research Foundation. BHRF had been around since 2008. BioNB, I'm going to get this date wrong for sure, but was, I think, somewhere in the 90s. So technically, from a legal perspective, 2008 would be the date that we would be using, but from a merger perspective, 2023.
Okay. And you're based in Moncton?
No, we are an innovation organization. We've embraced a digital footprint more so than anything else. So headquartered in Fredericton, which is the capital of New Brunswick. That's where our head offices are. But we have offices in Moncton, we have offices in St. John, and we have staff who work all over the province, mostly from home.
How large is your team?
We're 15.
That's a large team.
Yeah, it's a good size. There's people who are responsible for managing our programs, but then we also have people who are working in these newer areas of our mandate. So being able to do some of that connecting the dots work, or, some of the communications work that we need to make sure that we are helping researchers make their work matter to more people.
And how long have you been with the team?
I have been here since right before the merger in 2023, but I was named CEO last year in January.
Where were you before this?
Oh, a little bit all over the place. I like to say that I'm pretty non-traditional. So I'm actually a lawyer. I have no research background. I studied law, and then out of law school, I moved to New Brunswick for what was meant to be sort of a 1-year articling experience to get called to the bar. So I worked in child and youth law and worked for a legislative officer. I did my whole year of articles. I got called to the bar. And then during that time, I had been working on a project in youth mental health at a policy level. And so I transitioned to work for that project full time. Then I moved over to the total opposite end of the spectrum and worked on a healthy aging project, again at a policy level, full time for a couple of years before I did some consulting. And then I worked for the New Brunswick Health Council for a bit around, again, sort of knowledge mobilization of data and research evidence before I made my way here.
So a bit of a colorful past, but one I think from the sounds of it is one that you would employ on a daily basis. Hi, it's Jim. When we come back, Candice walks us through how ResearchNB funds research and who qualifies for that funding. Stay with us. I'm Jim Wilson, and you're listening to NGBiPlus. If you're a new listener, we would like to explain what NGBiPlus is all about. There are a lot of people and organizations in the Canadian life sciences community who are doing great work behind the scenes, and they often go unrecognized. The goal of this podcast is to talk about who those organizations are, explain what they do, and shine a light on the people behind them and the benefits they provide. Hi, it's Jim Wilson, and I'd like to take a moment to talk about the next Great Big Ideas Summit, which is coming this fall. If you are part of the Canadian life sciences community, NGBI is one of the key events you want to put in your calendar. The NGBI Summit is an independently organized, not-for-profit, national networking event that attracts innovators, investors, disruptors, academic entrepreneurs, industry suppliers, today's leaders, and startup founders from coast to coast who are quite likely many of tomorrow's industry leaders. The summit is an event that generates the kind of conversations that happen only when the right people are in the room. So If you are a member of the Canadian life sciences community, and frankly, even if you're not, but you'd like to be, this event is for you, and we invite you to join us. For details on sponsorship and to purchase tickets, please go to nextgreatbigideas.com. Thanks so much. We look forward to having you join us. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back. It's Jim Wilson, and my guest today is Candice Pollack from ResearchNB in Fredericton, New Brunswick. We were talking earlier a bit about funding, which is the other organization, not yours, correct?
No, it's ours. Funding, I would say, is our bread and butter. It's really what we do. So we operate somewhere between 9 and 12 funding programs every year. Some of them are broader programs that are meant to fund, let's say, student engagement in research, or we have an academic startup fund. So if you're an early career researcher, you're just getting started with your research program, you need that early investment to buy the right equipment, hire the right people, get your program up and off the ground. We fund that type of research from a capacity development perspective. We fund equipment. So if you're just looking to purchase something in particular, lots of mass spectrometers and genomic sequencers have come through our funding programs for sure. And then we fund ideas, which is you're applying on the basis of, I have a problem I'm trying to solve, and this is how I plan to solve it. And we offer a bunch of different types of programs within that pillar as well. So sometimes we're just looking to invest in a small seed of a new idea. I think this might work. It's a bit risky, but I want to try it, versus some larger, more transformational projects where there's multi-partners involved, lots of funding, typically industry or federal government investment as well.
Does the target customer, if you will, do they have to be based in New Brunswick?
They do. So I guess in a sense, right? Our funding can go to public sector researchers. So they have to be employed at a university, at a college, or at one of the nonprofit research institutes in our province. There's about 15 institutions that are eligible for our funding, but certain of our programs require those researchers to have, whether it's an industry partner, a community partner, a government partner, etc. And those partners don't have to be based in New Brunswick. So for example, earlier this week, actually, we announced a project that we invested in where the partner is Hydro-Quebec, and the project is looking at additive manufacturing in a water-based context for hydropower. So they're working with Hydro-Quebec very closely.
So is the funding non-dilutive? It's a grant? Okay.
It is a grant. You don't have to pay it back. We are giving you the money to do the research, and it's really about investing in sort of the brain trust that is in our public institution. So we give them the grant. We do require them to report on the outcomes under their grant, if it's a multi-year grant every year, and then at the end, and then for 1 and 3 years following. But if it's a 1-year grant, then it's just a sort of one time plus the 1 and 3 years following.
And what are the minimum maximums we'd be looking at there?
Well, that's a big number. We actually just did an award announcement on Monday. We had 7 projects we funded. One of them, we gave them $6,000. One of them, we gave them $400,000. So it very much ranges. It's a very complex framework in terms of what program does what and for what purpose. So, we fund things like social science research where the need for like an elevated amount of funding is not as high. They're not looking to, purchase consumables or buy like really expensive equipment. They really are looking for opportunities to engage with people with lived experience, hire students, etc. So they don't require large envelopes of funding. But then we also fund projects where we're talking about sort of buying the best of the best in terms of a genomic sequencer, and that costs a lot of money. So it really depends on sort of the program, the project, and what kind of fit there is.
I don't mean to belabor the point, but I think it's important to ask. The funding is from government. If there was a foundation that was interested in supporting the work that you're doing, do you partner with not-for-profit foundations or even private sector who are interested in writing a check?
Yeah, absolutely. In a whole bunch of different ways. I like to say, and I think I said at the start, we're an innovation organization, so we try and be as agile as we can. So we do have some long-standing partnerships with, for example, the Heart and Stroke Foundation of New Brunswick, where they have a cardiovascular research fund. We co-fund on that in a sort of partnership agreement. So if they pick the projects, we agree to co-fund. We have had had situations where industry has made an investment directly into us for a project that they wanted to fund. We've had situations where industry sort of came forward and said, we want to invest in this and we'd like to see the province at the table with us. So there is a whole bunch of different ways that we partner to be able to make sure that we're increasing investment into research in New Brunswick.
Okay. One last question about funding, forgive me. If there's a private company or just an individual that's interested in writing a check, is it tax deductible?
It's not. So that's why I said we try to be innovative with our partnerships. We've had that situation come up where somebody, wanted to write a check. They were looking to make sure it was tax deductible. We're a nonprofit. We're not a registered charity. So we cannot issue tax receipts, but we will engage in partnerships with an institution that can. So for example, let's say you wanted to fund a project and the researcher who is going to do that project is based at the University of New Brunswick. Well, post-secondary institutions can issue tax receipts if you make a donation there. So we have in the past entered into partnerships whereby the person who wanted to fund the project made their donation directly to the university and then we matched it as well.
Hi, it's Jim. When we come back, Candice and I talk about who ResearchNB serves and what she would like the Canadian life sciences community to know about the research and startups in New Brunswick. Stay with us. I'm Jim Wilson, and you're listening to NGBiPlus. Hi, it's Jim. We hope you like what we're doing, and if you do, we have a favor to ask. We will greatly appreciate you promoting us on social with the hashtags NGBiPlus, NGBI Podcasts, and NGBI Summit. And please become a subscriber so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get back to today's conversation. Welcome back. It's Jim Wilson, and I'm speaking today with Candice Pollack of ResearchNB about the funding programs, the partnerships, and the mission that is quietly changing what research looks like in New Brunswick. So, who is your true target client? Like, who should pick up the phone and call you?
Well, that's interesting because you use the word client, and there's actually, I would say, a little bit of disagreement even amongst our team about who our client is. And I say that because ultimately we offer funding programs, which means that researchers at public institutions, so any of those 15 institutions that we fund, are in a sense sort of clients of those programs. But we're a publicly funded organization. We receive taxpayer dollars every year, and it's our job to be a good steward of those taxpayer dollars and to invest them into research that's really going to have an impact for the province. So I would argue actually that the citizens of New Brunswick are our ultimate client.
Good answer. You've done this before.
I have not. This is actually going to be my first podcast. So.
Well, you're doing a great job. So if there are organizations like startups in the province of New Brunswick, and cards on the table, my family's from New Brunswick. You and I chatted about this some time ago, and my cottage is in New Brunswick. I look for any opportunity to spend time in New Brunswick, which in my mind, and for any listeners, please don't take offense, but New Brunswick is Eastern Canada's Saskatchewan or Manitoba. It's the province you drive through to get to where you're going. But if they actually stopped, they go, wow, this is a really cool place. So it's a really cool place. And I don't mean to sound like a tourism promotion here, but I love New Brunswick. It's fabulous.
New Brunswick's so underrated from that perspective. Like everything that you're going to get in every other Atlantic province, you're going to get here in spades. We have beautiful coastlines, highest tides in the world. We've got great food in our Tri-City areas, lots of amazing hikes and nature trails and waterfalls and beaches, all the things that you're going to look for in Atlantic Canada. We've got them here. I think in New Brunswick, we tend to be a little bit humble about all the great things that we have. It's the same thing as it relates to research and innovation. When you think about like research and innovation in Canada, I don't think the first word that comes to mind is New Brunswick as like a place that you're going to go. And we've been really, really focused on how do we change that narrative nationally, because there are amazing things that happen here. And we have been first in certain things, and we don't talk about it enough. We're too humble.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was actually speaking with a gentleman in commercial real estate brokerage yesterday who lives down east and does his work in the GTA, the Greater Toronto area. So he flies up every 2 weeks, attends meetings, does tours with clients and whatnot. And then he goes home. He has a condo in Toronto. And when I was asking him about it, he said, you know what? I love the maritime lifestyle. It's a quality of life issue for me, and I don't mind doing the commute. So with business as it is today we're doing this interview remotely. You're in Fredericton today, did you say?
Yep.
And I'm in Burlington, Ontario, working out of my global home office, and working from anywhere is still very much acceptable. And when I'm in New Brunswick, I am often sitting at my desk working. So do you have any recent wins you can share?
Recent wins. Yeah. We just on Monday announced $1.5 million in funding for 7 different projects that I think are going to be really cool in so many different ways. Like one of them was funding for the development of a prototype of a robotic arm to support farmers to improve their farming practices and their yields year over year. And then another one was funding for investing in the use and the development of synthetic data sets so that we can test different interventions within the healthcare system to identify, if we did this differently, would we see changes in patient flow across the system? Totally different projects, but super cool on both ends. I think, we in January were one of the first funding agencies in Canada to sort of come out of the gate and put priority on investments into dual use technologies. And so we launched a challenge program that was all about dual use tech and said, we'll fund, 3 of the best pivots to dual use technology research that we can find in New Brunswick. And those projects are still under review. So I don't know which ones we're going to be funding yet, but I think we are trying really hard to step outside the mold and get ahead of the curve and say, we're small, we're nimble, we're innovative. How do we do things a little bit differently as a funding agency? And on that note, maybe I'll just kind of loop that with my other big win that I think we've had recently. We just finished developing our research communication strategy. And again, this is a situation where I would say we're probably one of the first in the country to do this, because it's not about how researchers are going to do communication. It's about how we as a research funding agency are going to do that. So we kind of said, again, we're an active partner. We're going to hold hands with the research community and be at the table and support them to make sure that their research matters. So what's our role in that, not just their role?
What's your biggest challenge?
Not enough funding.
Gee, what a surprise.
I know, shocking. I certainly hear it all the time from the community. We run these funding competitions. Our success rate overall is about 33%. And then in terms of success rates for meritorious research, about 60%. So what that means is 40% of really good projects, we're not funding them because we don't have enough funding to do it. I say that in the context of, these are difficult economic times for the province and for the country, and we recognize that. And so this is just a challenge that we all have to face. We all have to think about how we do things differently and how we invest more intentionally and how we build the case as well for research as a contributor to economic development. And then, I would be remiss to say that another success we had recently is, we did convince our provincial government of the value of research because they actually increased our budget this year for the first time in several years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What in particular would you like listeners to take away from our conversation today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think one is just that, we talked about this a bit at the start. Research has so many different impact pathways, whether you're trying to solve a problem that's like a real policy challenge or whether you're trying to commercialize a new technology. Research is a very vague term in a lot of ways, but it has so many different avenues to drive impact. And, again, in the context of these really challenging economic times, doubling down on the brain trust that we have in New Brunswick, but also in Canada, and saying, let's work together and solve some of these big problems that we have and find a way to move those solutions outside of academia and into the real world. That's the type of, research that we're super focused on, is that collaborative, engaged, multi-partner research that we can support, that we can see, even if it's fundamental research and it's, I'm really at the stage of kind of testing out this brand new molecule and seeing if it has any impact in this mice model that I'm using. We want to know that you're looking and working actively to solve a real problem.
This has been so much fun. First off, I really appreciate you joining us and sharing information on ResearchNB. And it sounds like you're heading in a really cool direction. And I hope some people pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, I'd like to learn more.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Candice Pollack of ResearchNB in Fredericton, New Brunswick. To learn more about the work Candice and her team are doing, please go to researchnb.ca. You can also follow Candice on social at Candice-Ashley-Pollack. If you're wondering who I am and what I do when I'm not hosting podcasts, you can check out jim-wilson.ca and laboccupier.com. You can also follow me on social at laboccupier. This show was researched by Xenia Pinto and edited by No Limit Marketing. On a final note, if you'd like to get in touch, please send me an email. My address is jwilson@leonard, that's LENNARD.com. I'm Jim Wilson, and you've been listening to NGBiPlus. See you next time.